Everyone on my mini lecture. This lecture is supposed to be for the students that are going to be the students. But most of you are already students, but I don't care, I'm going to say the lecture anyway. The mysterious topic of the lecture is science friction. But to make it less mysterious, I decided to introduce some Polish translation. Science means nauka, friction means tarcie. IFE means studia w dechę. The plan of the presentation. First, I'm going to introduce myself to you. Then I'm going to tell about friction in theory. The most important part would be friction in practice. Okay, the introduction. My name is Krzysztof Kudrynski, but you can call me Albert or Hamish. I finished IFE, now I am PhD student in Medical Electronics Division. I am a tutor in the Electronics and Electrical Engineering and Biomedical Signal Processing. Today I am going to talk about friction. Why friction? Why not? Okay, let's start with some quotes. According to the definition, friction is a force resisting motion. Okay? So most of you have to say, come on, I want to move. Friction is bad. Yes? But I would say this is a joke. This is a joke. Because if you listen to me carefully, at the end of the lecture, you can speak with me, with my words, that friction can be wonderful. Be patient. Definitions and classification. According to the definition, friction may be internal or external. I am not going to talk about this not important thing. I'm going to move on to the most important parts, which are static friction, kinetic friction, and sliding friction. Okay. The picture shows Hamish and the wardrobe. Hamish will demonstrate you to understand friction. So let's suppose Hamish wants to move the wardrobe. Okay? So he applies a terrible force of 5 kilonewtons to push the wardrobe. And the wardrobe what? And the wardrobe nothing. It's incredible, but it's true. According to the Newton's law, if Hamish applies a force which is not opposed by any other force, then the wardrobe should not move. Should move. But it does not move. And yes, there is an opposing force, and it is friction, and it's the same as the friction applied by Hamish. Okay, so Hamish says, let's increase the force. Hamish decides to increase the force. Now Hamish is ready to apply 10 kilonewtons to the wardrobe. And the wardrobe what? And the wardrobe nothing. According to the Newton's law, the opposing force, which is friction, is the same as the force applied by Hamish. Which can be shown on the floor. Hamish says, no way. I'm going to increase the force applied to the wardrobe. Now, ladies and gentlemen, Hamish is ready to apply 15 kilonewtons to the wardrobe. And the wardrobe what?
Nothing.
And the wardrobe nothing. I'm not going to tell you anything more about the wardrobe because when I was doing the exercise, it is really confusing. In this time, Hamish decided, okay, I'm very tired, I'm going to increase my force only a little bit. A short exercise, Hamish is ready to apply force 15 kilonewtons plus 1 newton. And the wardrobe moves. Okay, but we need to now stop for a moment. I decided to put a pause, okay? Because we need to think about something. The animation is maybe not very good, but you should all notice the acceleration. The wardrobe was moving with acceleration. We have to ask Hamish what happened. Okay, Hamish, tell us what happened when the wardrobe finally moved. What you felt? Hamish says it suddenly became lighter. Okay? So, it didn't become lighter, but the friction was decreased, which means that the friction during static was higher than the dynamic friction. Now I will try to explain it. The explanation is very simple. Please be more patient, okay? Don't laugh, this is a very important topic. Okay, now I am explaining why static friction is higher than dynamic friction. The explanation is simple. It is much easier to continue moving than to start moving. Okay, now you can see all the theory in one slide. I'm not going to give you the details. You can write an email to me and I will explain. It is worth to add that you don't need to push to have friction. Sometimes you can put an object on the inclined plane. Then a part of a gravity force will become the sliding force. The situation becomes complicated when the inclination angle becomes high. Then the sliding friction becomes higher, the sliding force becomes higher than sliding friction, and according to my experiences, this is not very comfortable. Okay, now I move on to the next part of the presentation, which is friction in practice. Everyone has in their head a brain, usually. And the neurons need to communicate between themselves. This is very important topic, it's very scientific, please listen. They can communicate between themselves, yeah, this one and this one, using electricity or chemical carriers. You know what chemical carriers? I know this is a lecture in English and you need to be a perfect English listener to understand. Because I was learning all my life English. But you need to focus. You need to focus. Okay? You know what focus is. Yeah? So, the neurons may communicate using chemical carriers. The problem is that when they communicate with chemical carriers from one neuron to another neuron. In between, there is a synaptic cleft. A synaptic cleft, very difficult image. And the problem is that there is friction of the carriers when they pass through the synaptic cleft. And the definition of mental friction is the friction of chemical signal carriers against the synaptic cleft medium. Now, I would like you all to make a short experiment. Can you follow me, everybody? Please, everybody, rub your hands. Faster. Faster. Okay, stop. Now, everybody should feel the heat, yes? The hands became hot, no? Wait a second. This is the experiment, yes? So the hands became hot, and the obvious fact is that heat is a side effect of friction. When we talk about mental friction, there is a different side effect. The side effect of mental friction is a face expression. The picture you can see is a typical face expression of a person born with mental friction tending to infinity. Another problem is a specific type of fluid in the synaptic cleft which increase mental friction. When you go to IFE, most of you are from IFE, mental friction is zero. No matter what the fluid inside, as you can see. So, another very important practical part of friction is relationship friction. The first type of relationship friction is intermental relationship friction. This is a friction between a boy and a girl. But please don't go too far in your imagination. This is still intermental friction. This is a friction when a boy and a girl start to build a relationship. Okay? And there is no theory about that, but there is a strange side effect which you can see on the photo. Unfortunately, mechanical friction is not in the scope of today's lecture. However, I really encourage you to see the current literature on the topic. What is more, maybe not from my experience, but everyone says that the friction, mechanical relationship friction is very similar to mechanical sliding friction, especially as far as heat flow is concerned. Okay, now I would like to move on to science friction. You are driving the car and you see a red light. Yes? You see a red light somewhere. And your brain expects that in a second the orange may appear and then the green may appear. Yes? You may expect this. But when you finally see the orange light, your brain needs 300 milliseconds to start to process this information. This is scientific, this is true. So your brain, you expect something, but when you see it, your brain needs 300 milliseconds. This is called P300 symptom. In my institute, the Institute of Electronics, we decided to make an experiment. We put electrodes to the human brain of a student, and we told him that he needs to expect an exam, and he needs to expect that we are going to show him a book. There was no P300 symptom. Science friction is a specific kind of mental friction. It is observed when neural communication network attempts to evoke scientific thinking. Okay? The last thing is academic friction. Academic friction, according to the definition, is friction between students and studies. In normal studies, the blue line, the friction is similar to the typical mechanical sliding friction. In the beginning, it is very high because you need to pass the registration process. But finally, when you go through the registration process, you may rely on Newton. Okay? Nothing will happen to you. The first rule of Newton. This is not a discouragement, but on IFE, the friction tends to infinity and is very high. But what is the most important thing? If you are clever enough and you can pretend that you are stupid, you have to come to IFE, because during your studies at IFE, you will not only learn how to live with infinite friction, you will learn how to use it.